Welcome to the Myopia Podcast, where we give you the latest myopia research, clinical topics, and industry insights. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all awesome myopia content. And now to our host, a massive myopia manager himself, Dr. David Kading.
Myopia management is one of the fastest growing areas in eye care, but it takes the right playbook to make it work. And that's why I work with Treehouse Eyes. They provide the training, ongoing support, marketing, and tools to help independent optometrists succeed. If you're passionate about myopia management, visit growmymyopiapractice.com to learn more. And now back to the show.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Myopia Podcast. Today, I am excited to be joined by Mr. Michigan himself, M&M. This is Matthew Martin, and he is a myopia master in the great state of Michigan, right?
Yes, and I'm truly honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you.
It's going to be exciting.
So, boss, tell us a little bit about your practice and where you're at, and just lay out that for us.
Yeah, so I have a fairly unique setting. I have been practicing ortho-K since 2002, which goes back a few years. I was fellowed in 2005, and what makes my setting unique is my practice is in a rural setting, meaning I have 2,000 people in my town. And yet we have a booming orthokeratology and myopia management practice. We are located in Auburn, Michigan, between Midland, Bay City, and Saginaw. So there are some bigger towns, not like cities like you traditionally think of a Detroit or something along those lines. But we do have some draw from those smaller cities, if you will, in the area. But what makes our practice unique is that we have patients that travel 2, 3, 4 hours away to come see us, which is spectacular.
That's awesome. What aspect of your practice with regards to orthokeratology is adults orthokeratology versus children?
Yeah, this is interesting. We obviously prefer to work with pediatrics if we can with regards to myopia management with ortho-K, but we have been using a new system recently to do more advertising, and we've been seeing a lot more adult ortho-K patients. Now, we do a fair amount of adult ortho-K already, but it's really exciting when you're working with the hyperopic, presbyopic adults and kind of exploring all those different options for treatment for them and for giving them satisfactory vision.
Yeah, what are you doing to get all these people coming in?
Yeah, so we're using a new system.
You can
okay.
say
Okay.
names.
Yep. So working with Jason Carruthers with ortho-K Launch, and his system involves AI-driven social media. And it's amazing how many people are reaching out to us on a daily basis. Like I had to literally hire someone to schedule patients in because that's the demand that we're getting. Now, not all of those leads are good leads. A lot of times they come in and they're not maybe the perfect candidate, maybe they're post-LASIK and we have some difficulties, or maybe they're a -8 or 9 or 10 as an adult and we know there's going to be some complications there, or maybe they have a unique cornea, but the volume of patients that we are getting who are interested in ortho-K as adults has gone through the roof.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you have a guess in your mind of what percentage is kids versus adults?
Yeah, we're probably still about 95% kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been probably 95% kids for the longest time. But once you fit an adult in ortho-K and they get used to it, they love it and they never give it up.
Yeah.
So we have tons of adults who still do ortho-K who've been doing it for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, yeah. So if you're getting an overwhelming response from adults right now and 95% are children, you must have a ton of kids.
We are very blessed.
Your myopia management must be doing really well, and that must mean that you have figured out the process and the system to get them past the point of paying you into the office. So talk me through that journey that somebody goes through. Let's say there's two ways they can come in. One is they've found you somewhere else and they heard about myopia management. Another one is they come in just for a comprehensive exam. Let's talk about they come in for a comprehensive exam. How do you move into that direction?
Yeah, so I think a big part of that for us is routine axial length measurement on young people. So we routinely measure, I know this is near and dear to your heart as well. We use the Myopia Master, and we routinely measure axial length measurements on those people under the age of 18. And that is huge, because I'll have a patient come in, maybe they don't have a prescription at this time, and they'll come in and we'll run their axial length measurements, and then when they hit the exam room, and we're talking about a child who's maybe a -0.5 or maybe -1, and I can say to the parent, your child may be a -1, but their eyeball is way longer than it needs to be already, so we know if we don't do something, that actual glasses prescription is going to rapidly catch up to the length of the eyeball. So the first thing is identifying who's going to make a good myopia management patient and who's going to be someone who doesn't need our services. And I think axial length measurement, the ability to functionally measure that and to be able to integrate that into your practice is key. And then I have a very brief conversation with the parents. Your child absolutely is going to have a very long eye if we don't do something. Let's schedule you back for an evaluation for myopia management.
What if I come in from an outside source, like I've heard about it somewhere else, and I know that you do that? Do you do a second visit, or is that first visit that consult?
Yeah,
then?
typically if someone comes in on a referral, and we're getting more and more referrals, it's been a hard row to hoe, if you will, with referrals, because it's difficult for doctors to give up a patient, or they're worried they're going to give up a patient, right? That's a whole interesting conundrum. But if they come in specifically on a referral from another doctor, we are going to put them into a myopia management evaluation right away.
Yeah. So what does your consultation look like, really briefly? And then I want to talk to you about the conversation you have.
Yeah, I think when it comes to our consultation for a myopia management patient, and we know that they're coming in specifically for that, then what we do is we highlight where their axial length measurements are, where their prescription is, family history, where the concerns lie, what the parents' feelings are, and what the child's disposition is. It's interesting when we talk about how parents feel. There's guilt involved. If I'm a -9 and my kid's already a -1 at age 7 or 6, I'm worried that kid's going to end up with a big prescription like I had, and that's going to be a burden for them, right? So for parents, there's a fair amount of guilt that they need to talk about, or there's a fair amount of concern that they have, or angst or anxiety. So we try to address that when we're talking about what the experience is for the parents. Where does their concern lie? What do they want to do to try to assist that child and make things more successful for their child? And then part of that process as well is talking to the child. Are you willing to touch your eye? Do you want to be out of glasses so that you can play your sports? You know, you need to have involvement with the parent and the child within the bounds of that time that you're spending with them. And we set aside a fair amount of time, especially if it's a referral. You know, I'll put aside 45 minutes to go over everything.
In that 45 minutes, you're doing some measurements and so forth. So what does that last bit of conversation? So walk me through the consultation and what you're saying to the kiddo about moving forward with treatment, and then obviously about to the parent.
Yeah, so we've been at this point, we've been talking to the parent about the fact that typically the parents are myopic, what we're going to do about it, and then I just present their options to them. I have a simple sheet that says we can do peripheral defocus contact lenses, like the MySight lens. We can do low-dose atropine, okay? Or we can do orthokeratology, or what we call GVSS in our office. So I lay out what their options are, and then I ask the parent and the child, what do you think you might be interested in? Because some children don't want to touch their eye, okay? Some parents don't want to put a drop in their eye if they can put something mechanical like a peripheral defocus contact lens like the MySight, or like an Ortho-K lens. So I like to give the parents some flexibility on what they can choose and help them to guide me. But inevitably, most of our patients choose Ortho-K because they seem to like it more than the other options out there. And then later on, we can get into deciding whether or not we want to combine Ortho-K with low-dose atropine, or a peripheral defocus contact lens like the MiSight or the VTI with low-dose atropine. So I try to give them some options, and then they help guide me on what their satisfaction is going to be.
Yeah. So your GVSS stands for Gentle Vision
Shaping system. It's just what we called it 20 years ago.
Yep. There's also vision shaping treatment.
Molding.
There's CRT, corneal refractive therapy, or, with what Paragon calls it with CRT, or sleep shaping. So lots of different names, and sometimes people put those names in there as a way to, further describe, more gently describe something called orthokeratology, which just sounds like a $70 word, right?
And so what I do typically is I'll say GVSS, which we also call orthokeratology. Yeah. So I try to explain to the patient that we use the terminology in our office, but really what we're doing is ortho-K.
Yeah. So you speak with the parent and share options with them, and kind of in that process, are you leaning towards one option usually?
Yeah, so that so much depends on what the cornea looks like. That depends on how much astigmatism we're working with. That depends on what the child's disposition is. Some children are just totally afraid to touch their eye. And for those kids, I will often say, let's start them on low-dose atropine. Because if you have a child that's afraid of touching their eye, and you can start that child on 0.01 or 0.025% low-dose atropine, then they get used to the parent putting a drop in every day.
Yeah.
And then I tell you what happens. 3-6 months later, I'm like, hey, let's put an ortho-K lens on. And they're like, oh, I don't want to touch my eye. But when I go to touch their eye, I can put it on just fine because they're used to having their eyelid pulled down and a drop put in their eye.
Yeah. Yeah, knowing you, I know that you don't do it the way I'm about to describe, but one of the things I hear practitioners do, and I coach people against, is presenting options to people so that the parent is the one selecting it. And by presenting those options, it's almost like, I don't know what's best, but what do you think is best? And I heard from you that you're really kind of guiding them, and like there are things that we can do. And what I like to do is I like to say there's multiple options of treatments that can be utilized, but based off of what I've learned about your child, what I've seen in the exam, this is the one that I think would be the best way to start. And that way it takes the doctoring back, and it says, you're trusting me with all this money and your child, and so here's what I think is going to be the best way for us to get to the outcome.
And I think that's 100% true. When I say I'm offering options to the parent, I'm offering very much guided options, right?
Yeah.
Because some parents will just absolutely put their feet down and they're like, we do not want to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Okay, then let's go about it a different way. I'm going to get what I want eventually anyways, which is what's in the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
If a parent says, I really want to do a peripheral defocus contact lens like the MiSight or the VTI, but their child's got 2 diopters of SIL, then I'm going to have a conversation where I'm like, well, I'm going to have to put glasses on your child on top of that peripheral defocus contact lens. Is that really what you want to do? Or we can do ortho-K, which I think will be better because I can account for that 2 diopters of astigmatism.
Right. So just real briefly, and I know we're not talking fees and so forth as part of this, do you have different fees depending on the treatment, or do you charge a myopia management fee that's a singular fee?
I love the idea of charging a myopia management fee that's a universal fee, and I did do that for a while, and it just did not go as well as I had intended. So basically the way we have our fees structured, and we're not going to discuss specific numbers here, but I tell people that the cost on ortho-K, for example, is going to be more upfront, okay, and then less on the years afterwards, okay, because the work is going to be that first year. You've had a lot of ortho-K. The first year is complicated. I got to get the fit right. Is the child happy? We had to teach them, tweak this, change that. Okay, it's perfect. After the first year, 9 times out of 10, it's just, this is the yearly program.
Yeah.
This is a new set of retainers. Those are your solutions. I'll see you in 4 or 6 months, depending on how I want to do it. It's very smooth and easy once you get through that first year. Peripheral defocus contact lenses start out less, but it's the same price every year because you're buying the program plus all those contact lenses. And then low-dose atropine, we do charge less for low-dose atropine. But a big portion of that is what they have to pay out to the company that's giving them their low-dose atropine too, right? So I would love to do the idea of charging universally for everything, but let's be perfectly honest, it's less effort to do a low-dose atropine patient, and my low-dose atropine patients were really squeaking when we were like, it's going to be this amount of money. And I didn't feel comfortable with their squeaking on the cost differentiation,
Sure.
and I certainly wasn't going to lower the fees on the complicated things we do.
Yeah. There isn't one right way, and so we battle with the same thing. We do a universal myopia
I
management
love that.
fee, and it's because we don't do treatments.
We do programs.
manage myopia, and we're selling a program. And midway through, if I have a patient who needs a change to their Ortho-K lens, that's on me. If I have a patient who's doing atropine and 3-6 months in, I need to do Ortho-K and atropine, then I do that and I don't charge any more. And so it's like one fee regardless of what happens. If we switch midway through and do soft multifocals, the rest of the year's supply is covered. Now, there's obviously variable costs on me if things need to be changed or switched, but inevitably across the communal component of everybody being in myopia management, some people pay maybe a little bit more, some people pay a little bit less.
See, I think that's genius, and I really wouldn't mind sometime not on this podcast picking your brain on how that works and how the success is on
there's
that.
all sorts of messes around it, right?
I'm always trying to come up with a better way.
Yeah,
I think
there's always arguments to be made either way. There's no perfect solution.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we're at the Vision by Design meeting, by the way, in case people didn't know it. I think what makes this meeting special is that the doctors that you run into here are all trying to figure out what's going to be a better way. Mm-hmm. And I run into people who I think are amazing experts, who are way more intelligent than I am and way more with it than I am. Like yourself, for example, and then you come up with an idea where I'm like, that's brilliant.
Well,
I'm stealing that.
To those people out there that are doing it the same way as you, there's all sorts of advantages to that method. And in my mind, the disadvantage to it potentially is that it comes across like you're selling a product. You're selling orthokeratology, you're selling soft multifocals, or you're selling atropine. And in the mind of, I can get atropine cheaper somewhere else, right? But when it's all the same price, potentially it could be seen as, well, this is for the program. This isn't for what product we're using.
I'm not opposed to that, and I like the idea of it. I will tell you unequivocally that we very much drive the point home to patients that we are selling a program.
Right.
So
if you can do that appropriately and well, then that's a better system.
I think that's the magic. I have a colleague of mine who practices not terribly far from where I'm at, who says he's doing myopia management, but he's not fitting an appropriate lens. He's not doing any axial length measurements. He's not doing any of the things that you need to do. He's calling it myopia management. If you're going to have myopia management, you need to have an intelligent program where you are measuring axial length measurements. You're taking those things into consideration and giving that concierge care to those patients. So I love your methodology. I think it's brilliant.
We just had Michael Lipson on, and he wrote a letter to the editor for the Academy, and it was the differentiation of myopia treatment, myopia control, and myopia management. And if you prescribe a product which has been shown in the historical past to slow the progression of myopia, we can call it myopia control, but you don't have a universal all-encompassing. So somebody who prescribes, say, a MiSight at the exam and says, we'll see you next year, that's myopia control. Myopia management is when you're doing everything, including discussions around environment, discussions around behaviors and habits, and you're following that patient on a 3-month basis or a 6-month basis and seeing them, right? I see my patients every 3 months, particularly for the first year, maybe 2 years, and then depending on their rate of progression, I may slow down that cadence, and that's usually there may be a less cost in those subsequent years, which takes care of that. But the aspect of myopia treatment, because we all hear people on Facebook being like, well, I do myopia management, I give people glasses, right? Well, that is a myopia treatment. And I think he did a really good job of differentiating those 3 things so that now when I hear myopia control, I'm like, oh, so you prescribe a product which has maybe historically been seen, but you don't know the outcome of that until maybe a year.
Yeah, and even then, really what you're measuring is the refraction.
Yeah.
Unless you're very specifically looking at axial length measurements. And we could have a whole conversation about, I mean, I have gone from obsessing over prescriptions to obsessing over axial length. I really almost don't care what's happening with the prescription
Right.
itself, which
Right.
drives some of my colleagues crazy. They're like,
Yeah.
well, this patient's only a -3. Yeah, but look at their axial length is way too long.
Yeah.
So I know they're going to have a problem.
And it's progressing faster than the refractive error correction component should be. I'm so grateful. My wife, just this last week, she had a patient who was a -0.5 in one eye and a +75 in the other eye. He's 15 years of age, but over the last couple of years, his axial lengths have been progressing, way faster, kind of like the scale of a 10-year-old. And he was progressing, 0.15 or so every single year. And at that age, we don't want to see that happening. And she was like, I think he needs myopia management. I'm like, that it's not a refractive correction, right?
It
And
is
so I was
not.
like,
It's an
so
axial length
genius of
issue.
her. She saw it. She knows she does binocular vision in pediatrics. So myopia management is dear to her heart, but she doesn't do it. She refers it into our clinic. So I want to get back to, because this is why I sat down with you, is I want to know how we're capturing those patients. What are those conversations that lock them in to being like, I'm in? So give me your close of be like, this is how we close the deal for the mom and the kiddo.
Well, that's interesting. I think closing the deal is a big part of the process of doing a consultation. Can you openly, with open body language and honesty and engagement, tell that parent and tell that child that you're going to help to manage their myopia? And then when you do, you need to get out of your own way. This is what we're going to do. This is the program that we're going to put in place. Let's make this happen. And people want, at the end of the time that you spend with them, they want to leave there feeling confident in you. They want to feel like you took their situation firmly in hand and are doing what you would want to do for your own family member. And I often tell patients, my son's been an ortho-K for, 12 years now or something like that, right? And I tell people, I would never do something for you that I would not do for my own child. And this is what I would recommend if this was my kid. And I think we need to go forward with this and embrace it and see what we can do to make sure that your child is one of the ones who doesn't have the pathology later in life, who doesn't have the problems to deal with. And I think as long as you're open and honest and wrap it up in an enthusiastic way, most people are really good. And if you feel uncomfortable with the monetary component, find someone who is comfortable.
Yeah, there's somebody in your office who can do that. Hopefully there's multiple people who can, openly say, hey, it's this much money, right? And it's that even in team meetings, what you can do is you can just have each team member practice saying to somebody and looking them in the eye, that's going to be $1,000 for that piece of chocolate. That's going to be $2,000 and just getting those words out of your mouth and being able to comfortably say that is hard for people, right? And let's do it with confidence as opposed to, shying away from it.
And your staff has to believe. Your staff has to believe in myopia management. Your staff has to believe in you. And your staff has to believe that you have the best interest of that child in mind.
Yeah.
And once they do, it should fall into place.
Yeah. Having discussions with your team and, developing a PowerPoint or a program that you can bring in and share with your team about things. And, launching myopia management into your practice needs to be something that is a purposeful thing that you do with gusto and discussing it with everybody. And such a huge component at it. I want to just bring in 2 sentences that I like to do to help close the deal on the myopia management consultation in our practice. And one is we've discussed everything and we now have up on the screen the growing eyeball. And we'll just say, would you like to start slowing this down now? Or would you like to see how fast it continues to progress? Because if they want to come back later, we'll do a free axial length measurement on them in our office. And we're happy to continue to show them. And those other follow-up visits, either a doctor can do it or a team member can do it. But asking those 2 questions after every discussion on axial length is, would you like to start slowing it down now? Or would you like to see how fast it continues to progress?
See, I really like that. I like that. I'm stealing that.
You bet. Absolutely. Steal it away. Well, this is awesome, man. I love talking with people just like you who are crushing it, already doing so much, because I take away some really good tidbits. My resident is getting balloon animals. She's
Qualtex 260s. That's the secret. There's a specific balloon you got to buy.
Qualtex 260. So Matthew does balloon animals for his patients.
Honestly, that's one of the best things I ever did. So I started doing balloon animals for the kids about, 15 years ago or something. And I don't know if you're in the boot camp lecture that I was giving today, but there was a blizzard. In Michigan, it can get cold. So there's a blizzard outside. Imagine snow, 40-mile-an-hour winds blowing by the front of the practice. I'm up by the front desk working with a patient. This woman goes by, and she's got 2 kids with her, okay? And they're dragging behind her because it's like almost Christmas, and she's going to the post office, and it's blowing out there. It's crazy. And I hear over the wind, this kid go, "I want to see Dr. Martin. I want a balloon." And the mom was like, "We don't have time. We have to." And so I went and I opened the door, and I'm like, "Get in here." And so the kid comes in, and I had my staff go grab the balloon stuff. I made him a quick balloon animal, and the mom was like, "Oh, Lord, you've done it now." And that was like, I am winning. Anytime kids come in and they're excited, I see so many kids that come into our office where they've been to a pediatric doctor that doesn't like children.
Yeah.
If you've got kids in your office, you have got to be like enthusiastic and excited. I have kids that come in and they're like, "Dr. Martin, yeah," like secret handshakes and like the whole thing. And that's where the joy's at.
Yeah.
When kids come in and they're like, "This is the best place ever." I mean, who doesn't want that in their workplace?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want that?
That's awesome. Yeah. So cool. Well, thanks, buddy. It was awesome to get to know you a little bit better. And thanks for being on the podcast.
Well, it's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for joining us for this episode of the Myopia Podcast. Also want to bring your attention to the Myopia Workshop, which is at themyopiaworkshop.com, where we can deal with how to make your conversions more comprehensive, getting you to 90% conversion on almost every single case, and helping those patients go from no to let's go. Thanks for joining us in this episode. We'll see you next time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you for tuning in to the Myopia Podcast. If you enjoy our content, please leave a 5-star review, and don't forget to subscribe for more great episodes.